I was seated at our expensive mahogany dining table, surrounded by college acceptance letters, the day I discovered what betrayal truly feels like. Harvard, Stanford, MIT. The table was covered in glossy letterheads that resembled confetti, but my hands were shaking because of the Princeton letter. Mom? Dad? I said, clutching the letter as if it were the Holy Grail. I got in. I was accepted to Princeton! 3 generations of the Montgomery family's self-satisfied legacy were ingrained in every square inch of stained glass and pompous wallpaper, and my voice reverberated throughout the vast Victorian tomb that served as our home. As my mother came closer, her heels clattered on the hardwood floor. A smile that stopped short of her eyes was plastered on her face, which was Botoxed into almost complete expressionlessness. My father trailed behind, a little hesitant in his typical alpha stride. Wonderful, Catherine, my mother remarked. It wasn't great, though. Not in her own words. Not the way she looked at my father, who cleared his throat and untied his expensive tie as if he were going to give a eulogy. Kathy, please have a seat. We must speak. Yes, I did. Slowly. I continued to hold the letter, as if it would protect me from what was about to happen. Your brother William's startup is showing tremendous promise, Dad said, immediately slipping into his well-practiced investor pitch voice. His invention has the potential to transform the storage of renewable energy. The weight of the room began to shift, and I suddenly felt it, as if I were going to lose something. However, how is that related to my tuition? With my voice constricted in my throat, I inquired. Mom took a step forward. Her fingernails followed the table's edge, as if she were examining a model at a showroom. We've made the decision to fund William's business. This is a unique chance that could ensure the family's survival for many generations. Slowly, I nodded. All right. What about my college fund, though? The one you've had on hold for me since my birth? I had never heard anything so loud as the silence that followed. My father, in full name mode, said, Catherine, never a good indication. We've decided to assist William's business endeavor with your college money. It is in the best interests of the family. No. No. What? I muttered. How much? With a trembling voice, I asked. Dad scowled. What? How much did you give him from my college fund? Mom paused, then glanced down as if she had suddenly developed a keen interest in the grain on the table. Everything. The entire $289,000. The figure was like a kick to the stomach. I was having trouble breathing. $300,000, almost. Each birthday check, every summer employment, each tutoring assignment. All of the hushed "we're doing this for your future" statements have vanished. Given to the golden boy of the family as a snack from a vending machine, I got up so quickly that my chair slid and fell over. Did you even consider asking me? My mother remarked, You're being dramatic, in a dismissive and icy tone. Millions of dollars might be made from William's proposal. Like everyone else, you are able to take out student loans, or perhaps begin at a community college in your area. I chuckled. Or perhaps I shed tears. Somewhere in the middle, it emerged. You always told me that education was important, that everything had to be earned by me. And now you're taking it all away? I did. For him? Dad's voice roared. Enough. This choice is final. As a member of this family, you must support what is best for everyone, and William needs this investment. For everyone's benefit. Best wishes for William. The first refrained from crying. Then no. Not in their presence. Rather, I turned and went to my room via the stairs. Most likely, they assumed I would just lie in bed and cry into my honor roll certificates. I took out my biggest backpack instead. I packed my clothes, my laptop, my passport, social security card, certificate of birth. I was never intended to use the emergency credit card. The $200 stat was originally intended for Princeton merchandise but was hidden away from tutoring sessions. Upstairs was silent, the sort of silence that precedes a storm. I heard William's Tesla come into the driveway downstairs. His chuckle, the fawning of my parents. Favoritism, illusion, and ego are the holy trinity. I got my laptop open. 2 emails. First, to Princeton. Dear Admissions Committee, due to unanticipated financial circumstances, I must regretfully decline my offer of admission. To my parents, second. You made a decision. I'm building mine now. Don't try to find me. Stay away from me. Without the family name or the family money, I'll work this out. I sent it. I then removed my phone's battery. An old trick. They wouldn't anticipate me using it. All of the medals, trophies, and certificates that surrounded me in my room were now useless. It was meaningless to them, not that it didn't have any significance. Like I was 14 again, I snuck away to a sleepover by climbing down the vine outside my window. But I wasn't going back this time. I did not look up at the bottom. I simply strolled. Leave the house. The heritage, the name, the treachery. I have $200 in my pocket. Anger, sorrow, and a sharpness, a fresh clarity were all in my chest. I had no idea at the time that I would be sitting across from them in a corporate boardroom 10 years later, with the future of their business in my hands. However, I was certain of one thing at the time. They put all of their money on William. I would therefore wager everything on myself. And I was totally on board. Burned coffee and chili terror were the flavors of the first night. I wound up in a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of Boston, the type that had a jukebox that hadn't worked since 1996, sticky laminate menus, and flickering neon signs. Like some ghost of the future I had just buried, I sat in a table by the window with my backpack at my feet, and my Princeton letter still folded in my coat pocket. I was 18, no strategy, no fallback, nobody. The first placed a coffee order. I drank it even though it was terrible. My phone sat on the table like a lifeless weight, its battery already gone. The missed calls were something I didn't want to see. Nevertheless, I did. From my mom, 17. My dad gave me a 5. Williams 1. Kathy, stop being so dramatic. Return home. It nearly made me chuckle. Nearly. I flagged down the waitress instead. She appeared to have been in charge of the establishment before I was even born. Like some sort of survival badge. Her name tag said Maria and had 5 tarnished gold stars on it. More coffee? I gave a nod, then paused. Are you hiring? She examined me. The interview clothes were still largely clean, but the edges were beginning to wrinkle from perspiration and adrenaline. I probably appeared more like a savant than a poor person because of my fancy laptop and luggage. She didn't dismiss me, though. Kinda, she said. Are you able to wash dishes? I am capable of learning. Assist the kitchen. It's 6 to 2. Minimum pay. Tips are divided. It is yours if you so desire. I let out a breath that felt like it had been held since Connecticut. I'll be present. On her order pad, she scrawled something and then ripped it off. Down the street is a motel. Request Jimmy. Inform him that I forwarded you. The weekly rate is superior. Maria suddenly came to my rescue. The motel room that night smelled like pine-scented cleaning spray and old cigarettes. I didn't give a damn. I didn't have to share a restroom, and my door latched. Really, luxury. I took out my laptop and sat on the bed. Like a mean joke, the Princeton letter gazed up at me. However, it wasn't. It was evidence. I was someone who had merited a spot among the greatest, not just some straggler with a grudge. I reflected on all the years I had spent guiding wealthy children through Sat Hell and AP Chemistry. I delivered, therefore their parents had given me foolish money. Acceptance rates to the Ivy League are honest. Then it occurred to me. I was unable to attend Princeton. However, that did not exclude me from creating something of my own. Hell, perhaps something better. I typed the opening line of a blank document. Princeton Accepted Scholar leads elite academic consulting, which offers individualized tutoring and admissions coaching. It sounded absurd. It sounded plausible, too. I worked through the night, created a basic website, created a logo using Canva, and spent $50 of my hard-earned money on business cards at an all-night print shop, ones that seemed professional, the sort that shouted, "You can trust me with your child's future." I had a business by 5 a.m. I was cleaning a ton of dishes in the diner's back at 6 o'clock. It was a cruel first week. Most of the time, I smelled like bleach and bacon grease. My feet hurt. My arms were burning. However, I continued to appear. Maria remained silent. She simply shared her knowledge with me, teaching me how to manage a restaurant, stretch inventory, and read people. Things that Princeton doesn't teach you. I would use my laptop to assist Maria's kid with her calculus homework during my breaks. We were overheard by a regular one afternoon. Rich, noisy, and sporting a Rolex, he likely said more than the names of his children. Your girl is quite intelligent, he said Maria. Does she offer private tutoring services? That day, I had my first customer. The following week was the second. Word got out more quickly than I anticipated. I was tutoring the children of Boston's elite within 2 months. Where I was from didn't matter to them. Results were important to them. I also delivered. I changed my name to Kate Morgan. It was similar enough to my own to seem genuine, but it was far enough away from Montgomery to not cause suspicion. After Princeton, I informed people that I was taking a year off. Let them make up any tale they choose. I was earning enough money to quit the diner by the third month. However, I continued to return, sitting with Maria over coffee before the lunch rush and helping her with the books on the weekends. She evolved to become more than just a boss. She turned into my first true mentor. One Sunday, she remarked, "You're good with numbers. However, you work better with others. The real money can be found there." She was not mistaken. My consumers paid for more than simply math assistance. Hope was being paid for by them, for faith, in hopes of something greater. I was too familiar with that sensation. His mother once made the remark, "If only we could clone you, every parent in this city would hire you," while working with a pupil on an essay. I had trouble sleeping that night. Can you clone me? No. However, scale? Indeed. I began contacting other intelligent children, high achievers who had been accepted into prestigious institutions but were still unable to pay to attend. I proposed that they utilize my products, operate under my name, and keep 70% of the payment. I would take care of admin, clients, and marketing. Yes, they said. 10 instructors and offices in Boston, Greenwich, and portions of New York were established by elite academic consulting in less than 6 months. However, I exercised caution. Be cautious at all times. No media. No posts on social media. I didn't want William or my parents to know who I was. I led a modest life, little apartment, used furnishings. I invested the majority of my earnings in it and expansion stocks. I was aware that my window would eventually close. William, in the meantime, still switching between game-changing startups, consuming whatever remained of the family's trust. I kept silent watch. I wasn't resentful. All right, I was. I was primarily concentrated, though, devoted to creating something so solid and indisputable that they would eventually have to face the consequences of their decision. And I could accomplish that without spending a single cent of their $289,000. The moment I understood that I wasn't merely surviving everybody who has ever genuinely started over, has, in my opinion, experienced the moment when they stop running on fear and begin running on fire. For me, it happened 3 years after I left my parents' house, with a backpack and $200. Elite academic consulting was a machine by that point, not only a side gig or a lucky break. The majority of our more than 20 tutors were Ivy League students, just like me. Our customers? Upscale. A lot of pressure. Expensive. Imagine legacy mothers and private equity fathers who are trying to provide their children a future that appears promising on paper. In addition to giving them that, I also provided their children something tangible: self-assurance, a voice in their compositions, a real shot. Because I produced premium results, I charged premium fees. However, tutoring was never the goal. The seed was the culprit, and it developed more quickly than I anticipated. I discovered that I had cleared my first million on a random Tuesday. Wearing an enormous hoodie with the sleeves pushed up, leggings, and headphones, I was waiting in line at a seedy corner coffee shop when I glanced at my banking app, as if I were checking the weather. 1024, $38.76. All I did was look at the screen. Not because I didn't think it was true. However, I did. My dad's words, "This is what's best for the family," reverberated in that chilly dining room, and I burst out laughing as I stood in line between two men debating fantasy football. I didn't feel victorious. Not quite yet. I sensed that something was beginning, because what if tutoring made me $1 million? I mean, what else could I do? The problem with coaching wealthy children is that you ultimately get to meet their parents. And they discuss when those parents are tech tycoons, hedge fund managers, and C suite executives, particularly if you can finally make sense of supply side economics to their child. So I paid attention. Quietly, I asked queries. I also made notes. Always. I would return to my studio apartment on some evenings, open my laptop, and read market trends in the same manner that some people watch Netflix. I kept tabs on startups, investigated the founders, acquired knowledge of pivot strategy, equity dilution, and valuation terminology. I taught myself how to perceive opportunity in chaos, something that no business degree could ever teach me. Emma Chen then arrived. Emma was 16, intelligent but nervous. James Chen, her father, was the CEO of Chentech Solutions, a mid-sized tech business that was attempting to enter the energy storage market. When I first entered their home and saw the prospectus on his office desk, the irony was so strong that it nearly choked me. During a study break, Emma remarked, "Dad is worried. They're having trouble with their new energy storage system. I hear them arguing about it, but he won't say it." Storage of energy. Naturally. That night, I was awake all night, and my heart leaped at what I saw. They had a defective prototype, deathly, but not too far gone to save. Actually, I knew exactly how to turn it into something workable, or at least how to correct it. Getting a meeting with James Chen took 3 weeks. Asking parents, tutors, and consultants for silent favors took 3 weeks. I destroyed all of the social capital I had accumulated. I was 21 years old, wearing a suit that had cost more than my first 3 months' rent, and I was shivering so badly that I had to hold my laptop in both hands when I eventually entered his downtown corner office. He gave a courteous smile. "You mean, Miss Morgan? I hear great things about you from my daughter. Respectfully speaking, though, what gives you the impression that you know energy storage technology?" I launched my presentation after opening my laptop. After 4 hours, he had lost his smile. I was being offered a stake by him. 30%, he stated. "If you can fulfill your promises." 40, I shot back, in complete command over technology advancement. I'm not a silent partner at work. He took a long look at me, leaned back, and then nodded. Agree. The new Chentech system, which was faster, leaner, and more scalable than anything else, was on the market 6 months later. It was successful. All of a sudden, I was more than simply Kate the tutor. I was responsible for a technological innovation. I didn't even realize how quickly my net worth increased to 8 digits. The adjustment, however, affected me more than the money. Those who had previously ignored me now paid attention. Individuals who had provided mentorship were now approached for guidance. I was someone's daughter, so I wasn't in the room. I built the darn door, which is why I was in the room. I wasn't finished either. The success of Chentech served as a springboard for me. I began buying up smaller businesses, particularly those in the energy industry that had solid foundations but were undervalued, through shell companies, always. Always a layer deep under Morgan Global Ventures. The complete picture was never seen. I created a web so tightly that, unless I wanted it to, no one could find me, not even my folks. Not them in particular. I spent some time in New York. Next to Silicon Valley, kept my circle small, wore a black card, and lived like a ghost. Nothing in the public domain has my true name on it. Just Catherine Morgan, a historyless woman. Only outcomes. And I kept track of everything, not compulsively, not with animosity, just conscious. I was aware that William had spent all of his seed money. I knew that in order to finance one of his last chance endeavors, my parents had taken out a mortgage on one of the family's houses. Montgomery Technologies was bleeding slowly, and knew it. I waited after that. Because what is the one thing you learn better than anyone else when you've been undervalued throughout your life? Time. The day the roles were reversed, that occurred on a Thursday morning. I was at my San Francisco office, which was on the top floor, and had a peaceful view of the bay. It was the kind of place where venture capitalists felt cramped. Jordan, my assistant, entered with an odd expression on his face and a slim folder. He put the report on my desk and stated, "They're requesting a meeting." Who? He didn't respond. Simply tap the folder's name on the front. Montgomery Technology. I gazed at it. It had been years since I had heard that name spoken aloud. Not in that manner. Not connected to anything important. They're sinking, Jordan continued. Quick. The stock has dropped 70% in just 6 months. They are seeking a rescue of $50 million. I glanced at the file after opening it. The same name, identical logo. In every business pitch, my father used the same hyperbolic terms: legacy, innovation, and vision. Now, however, the statistics underlying the buzzwords were collapsing. They had no money, or near. They too went shopping in search of salvation. I didn't grin, not quite yet. Rather, I put my thumb to my lips and reclined back in my chair. I said, set up the meeting. However, ensure that Morgan Enterprises is printed on the letterhead. Don't bring me up. Not quite yet. Jordan gave a nod. Comprehensive. My heart was beating a little faster than normal as I gazed out the window, not because of nerves, from being aware, from eventually realizing that I would be the one holding the pen when they entered a room, believing they were pitching a complete stranger. The time had come. There has been no change at Montgomery Technologies. Identical granite pillars. Above the entrance is the same ostentatious gold lettering. The same security officer at the front desk continued to avoid eye contact. However, I had evolved. I was 18, wearing poor sneakers and heartbreak the last time I stood there. I now entered through the glass doors wearing Armani from head to toe, my hair pinned up like strength, my heels silent on the marble floor. They used to advise me to be realistic about becoming that kind of lady. An assistant hurried to meet me and said, "Miss Morgan, the board is waiting upstairs. Could I have your coat?" Suppressing a tiny smile, I gave it to her. I once heard my mother say that true success wore nice clothes. I had worn enough luxury clothes that morning to help pay for one of William's unsuccessful apps. "Coffee?" she inquired. I remarked, "Green tea. Steer clear of sugar. Appropriate steep time." The same thing Mom used to make fun of me for, as usual. It felt like a full circle closing on the elevator journey to the top. 10 years. Silence for 10 years. Of reconstructing. Of developing. And here we were now. The door to the conference room opened. I entered. At the head of the table was my father, Robert Montgomery, who was still attempting to project authority while wearing his trademark charcoal suit. Beside him, my mother's face was pale, and her posture was faultless. William, meanwhile, appeared to be already bored as he slouched in his chair and tapped away at his phone. My dad got up. He extended his hand and said, "Miss Morgan, we've heard great things about your company. I appreciate you coming." Observing the quiver in his fingers, I shook his hand. I said, "Let's get started." I listened to them pitch their business, as if it were still alive for the next 45 minutes. Sources of income, prospects for the market, innovative strategy. At one time, William interrupted to explain their next-gen prototype. I remained silent. Simply listen, made notes. Allow them to express themselves. After they were done, I turned on my laptop and flipped the screen to the one behind me. I clicked through charts and stated, "The decline started 10 years ago. Your burn rate increased, your revenue decreased, and important leadership choices continuously put short-term optimism ahead of long-term solvency." William moved around in his chair. My mother's hand was unsteady as she grabbed for a glass of water. According to my father, we took some calculated risks. I arched an eyebrow. Something like spending $289K on an energy idea that hasn't been tested? The quiet was overwhelming. He blinked. "How did you—" I got up and moved toward the window. Without turning, I replied, "Mr. Montgomery, tell me about your biggest business mistake. Maybe going too far in early-stage markets?" "No," I interrupted. "Your greatest error was assuming that your daughter would simply vanish." They were all staring at me when I turned around again. Pale faces, wide-eyed. "Catherine?" On the second syllable, my mother's voice broke. I grinned out of finality rather than hatred. "Hi, Mom, Dad, William. It has been a long time." William's phone fell out of his grasp and thumped against the table. My mom appeared to have seen a ghost. The recognition filled my father's face like smoke filling an old house, and he just stared. "It's not possible," William replied. I said, "It's not just feasible, It's lawful. 5 years ago, Catherine Montgomery Morgan underwent a transformation. If you had ever bothered to look, you would have known that. I prevented my mother from opening her mouth to apologize or perhaps to explain. I said, "You made your decisions. I made mine, too." My dad made an effort to get back into business mindset. "Why did you not simply tell us that you were the one?" "Because I required your presence, not in the role of a daughter. You didn't underestimate me as a girl. However, as the owner of 40% of the outstanding debt of your business, dead quiet." At last, my mother muttered, "What would you like?" I bent over. "What you broke, I want to fix. I'm offering a tech partnership with Chentech, cash infusion, and complete debt restructuring. However, there are restrictions." My dad gave a slow nod. "Continue." "First, William is finished. No more investments or titles, and no more squandering money like it was monopoly money." Despite William's stutter, my father raised a hand. "Comprehensive." "Two, both of you retire. This is no longer yours to steer. The ship has already been sunk by you." "And three?" my mother inquired quietly. I gave them both a direct look. "You acknowledge that the best thing you have ever done for me was to send me away. Because I didn't use the Montgomery name in anything I built. Without your funds, without your assistance." It was there. As they processed the truth, I saw their expressions. I couldn't read my father's face. Despite the tears in her eyes, my mother remained silent. William appeared disoriented. "Do we have an agreement?" I inquired, knowing the answer beforehand. My dad gave a nod. "Yes, Miss Morgan, we do." The name I reclaimed, I felt relaxed when I left the meeting room. Not victorious, not upset, just finished. The kind of work that doesn't require praise or retaliation. Like the taste of fresh air after a storm. Maria was waiting in the car downstairs. She insisted on accompanying me. Having flown in the previous evening, she had given me my first job, my first place to sleep, and my first reminder that kindness didn't have to be conditional. So she said it was only fitting. "How did it go?" She handed me a perfectly brewed green tea and asked. "Just as I had intended," I remarked as I got in next to her. I didn't go into detail. She refrained from pressing. "The problem with those who truly see you is that they can appreciate the significance of your tale without knowing the entire details." She took a sip of her coffee before turning to look at the skyscraper behind us. "Are you certain you wish to save them? Following their actions?" I gazed out the window at Montgomery Technologies, the recognizable gold letters across the granite facade. My stomach used to turn at the mention of that word. I declared, "I'm not saving them. I'm taking back what they attempted to discard." That was the reality, because hurting people wasn't the goal here. Making them see was the goal, allowing them to truly experience what it's like to sit across from the person they rejected and discover that she is now in control. Composing the checks, composing the terms. Composing the conclusion. Not in anger, though, not out of spite. In command, in tranquility. We moved away from the curb and made our way to the new office, which is located downtown and has a view of the bay. That afternoon, the sign was being put in place. Technologies of Montgomery Morgan. Ego wasn't the cause. It was deliberate. I didn't change their name. It was something I earned, not something I owed them. Because I made fire out of the ashes of what they left me. Because inheritance is not the source of legacy. It is the result of decision. I was standing in my office the following morning, looking at the wall opposite from my desk. There were 3 hung frames. The first was my admission letter from Princeton, which was still wrinkled from my grip on the day everything changed. The second, Elite Academic Consulting, LLC, my first company license, which was granted on a soggy Tuesday afternoon when I was still smelling like dish soap and diner coffee. The third is a little, basic name tag. Plastic that is black, white text. Kate, the waitress. I recall the day I received it from Maria. The way my trembling hands had clipped it onto my apron. The way she had responded, "Don't worry," on, with a smile. "You will discover your groove." And I did. Sessions of tutoring one at a time. One night of insomnia at a time. One silent unwillingness to surrender. Years went by. Montgomery Morgan Technologies rose to prominence in the field of environmentally friendly energy solutions. Within 18 months, The new Division 1 created using Chentek's technology exceeded expectations. Our name started to be mentioned alongside Tesla, Rivian, and Enphase. I established an initially unnamed organization to provide financial aid for scholarships for first-generation college students. I referred to it as leveling the damn field and never used the word charity. The community college that my mother so kindly recommended I go to, their new science facility was financed by us. At the ribbon cutting, I delivered the keynote address. They were never aware of my true identity. That was the idea. My folks? Quietly, they retired. My mom relocated to Arizona, silent retreats and yoga. My father remained in New England, continuing to read the Wall Street Journal while eating burnt toast and attempting to understand why things happened the way they did. We weren't close, nor were we adversaries. Peace might sometimes appear like distance. Sometimes healing entails avoiding reopening wounds to demonstrate that they have healed. William? He vanished from the business. When I last heard from him, he had moved to Austin to start something new. He had sent one email saying, "I'm sorry. It was always you who had the vision." I didn't answer, not with resentment. Simply put, closure. And me? I no longer wake up feeling angry. I get up with a purpose. I manage my business. I sip my tea. I tutor girls who are like me, too intelligent for their environment, too quiet to yell. You don't have to be loud to be powerful, I remind them. However, you must have greater faith in yourself than in anyone else. And I simply grin when they ask me how I managed to succeed without the money, the family name, or the support. Since the reality is, in spite of everything, I didn't make it. That's why I made it. Because they demonstrated to me what being rejected looked like. And I made the silent, steady, lifelong decision to never do it again. Not by them. No one. The best future isn't always the one that was promised. It's the one you constructed. Without a backup. Without a map. Only $200. And the steadfast conviction that you are more valuable than they ever realized. You are too. Believe me. I am aware. Catherine Morgan, once the pragmatic daughter, just